What if your horse isn't being disobedient? What if you just missed their whisper? In this episode, I'm talking with Angie Morin, former competitive dressage rider and trainer turned animal communicator. And we go straight at some of the beliefs that most of us were taught in training. The idea that horses take advantage of fear, that discipline should come before understanding, that big behaviors mean defiance. Angie backs up the theory that horses always communicate with a whisper. But when the whisper isn't heard, they escalate. And here's the part that might surprise you, especially if you're like me and you've resisted calling the animal communicator because you're not sure you want to hear what your horse has to say. According to Angie, unlike humans, horses always communicate with love. They don't communicate to criticize, they don't communicate to win. Even when they're telling you something hard, even when their behavior feels inconvenient, even when they're setting a boundary. We talk about why softer and slower is the message most horses are trying to send, why correcting and communicating are not the same thing, and why your horse may not need you to control him more, but to listen better. If you've ever wondered whether you are missing something, you might be. So let's get into it. Welcome, friends and fellow horse fiends. I'm Anna Fox of Equus Enlightened, and this is the Thinking Horse and Rider, the podcast dedicated to training you to become the best possible partner for your horse. Here, we explore the science and soul of horsemanship. We dive into equine behavior, the psychology of partnership, and compassionate training methods that help you become a thinking rider who creates a thinking horse. Because when you understand how your horse's mind works and show up with empathy and presence, everything gets easier and a whole lot more fun. My goal is to keep riding easy and fun for everyone, while helping you deepen your connection, find more flow, and maybe even create your own unicorn along the way. Whether you're working on dressage movements or just trying to understand why your horse did that thing they did, we'll explore the research, the real talk, and the small shifts that make a big difference in and out of the saddle. So grab your boots, take a deep breath. What are you waiting for? Come ride with me. Welcome, Angie. This is Angie Morin of Angie Morin Animal Communicator. And Angie has been doing animal communication for a little over 10 years now. Angie, thank you so much for coming on. And I would love for you to introduce yourself in your own words and share a little bit about your background, both as a rider and as an animal communicator. And then how did those worlds come together into the work that you do now?
Thank you, Anna. Thanks for having me on. So, I started off as a kid in horseback riding, like a lot of little girls do, just loving the animals. And that progressed into me becoming a trainer, owning a business, and competing professionally. During that time, I was getting a lot of difficult horses that people didn't want to deal with. They were rearing, they were bucking, they were bolting, they wouldn't let people ride them. And that matched my budget because I was a young professional. So
Yeah.
I worked easily with these horses. People started sending me difficult horses because I could make progress with them. I didn't know how I was doing it, but I just felt like I could understand them and
Mhm.
it worked. So, fast forward a few years after working with a lot of difficult horses, I lost my grandfather who meant everything to me. So that began a spiritual journey for me. And as I worked through grief and I progressed in my spiritual journey, I took some classes and I got invited to a mediumship development program of all things. So, funny story, I went there and I was not able to connect with any human spirits, but I kept getting animals. And so the participants that would come in to validate if we were accurate or not kept saying, yes, that was my uncle's dog. That's exactly what my uncle's dog did. Or, oh, my grandmother had a cat that had that name and looked like that and did those things. So the mentor and I realized my gift was with animals, not people. And then I looked back and I realized that's why I could work with horses the way I did. I
Mhm.
was able to just understand them. I was communicating with them telepathically, but I didn't know at the time. So I started playing with that. I continued to do horses, and then I found some mentors that worked strictly with animal communication. I studied under them. They helped me. I started to play around with it. I was doing readings for free for my neighbors, people with horses that I knew from the competitive world, friends, family. And eventually, I just decided to take the leap and put myself out there. I still did horses, and now my goal is, whether it's somebody that's riding or just a general pet owner, I want them to understand their animal better. I want to help the animal have a voice, because when the animal has a voice, their behavior changes dramatically. And that's what I realized without knowing it at the time. That's exactly what I was doing when I started with horses.
Yes, that is so true. I believe that. And I'm not an animal communicator, but I believe that, we talked before when I sent you the framework for this podcast about, those are two of the biggest things in my online course. I believe if you can communicate with the horse, if you can ask questions and hear the answers, you're going to have a way easier time than if you're just trying to dictate. So, when we talked a little bit before we started, I came up with the question of how do you broach any negative feedback from the animals with the people you're working with?
That's a great question, because negative things do come up. So, when I started working with animals, one of the things that's very important is I have to honor what the animal wants to say. I don't always know what it means. My job is just to relay that information. Animals as a whole are all loving beings, as we all know, and they never want to be a problem or a burden for us. Animals will never say anything negative about their guardian, but they may tell me why they're doing something which their guardian could perceive as negative.
Hmm.
So, the great thing about animals is they have a way of wording it with love. So, even if it's something that could be perceived as negative, they say it in the most beautiful, loving way. For example, I know my guardian's been really busy and I've seen her under a lot of stress lately. And then they will go on to say what they need to say. So there's always an understanding with it. They understand humans make mistakes, they forgive all the time. So when negative things do come up, it's, for lack of a better way of saying it, sugar coated in some way.
Right. That is really interesting because we just don't have that gift, do we?
No.
I think some people do. I always joke that my husband is one of these people he who could tell you you have just done the worst thing imaginable or you're the worst human on the planet, and you'd be like, "Thank you very much."
Yes.
And I don't understand. He's a fire chief now, but he's held lots of different roles in the fire department, and it's like I just saw you tell that kid that they made a huge mistake and they were like, "Thank you, sir. That's the best news I've ever gotten." So interesting that animals are capable of that. I feel like people when they hear animal communication, and I probably 20 years ago, maybe a little more than that now, would have been the same way, that I hear it and I'm like, this is mystical, abstract, woo woo, as one of my friends often says, really crunchy granola
Yeah.
hippie thing. So, how do you define it in a way that everyday equestrians can relate to?
So the first thing that any human can do, including horse people, is see the world through your animal's eyes. Often as humans, we see the world our way. The perspective that animals have is extremely different than the perspective we have. So, animal communication to me, step one, see the world through your animal's eyes. That means your interactions with that animal's interactions with other animals, that animal's perspective on its living situation, specifically horses, since that's our topic today. Turnout, who are they turned out with? How much in a stall? How much are they in a stall? What's the energy in the barn? See it through their point of view. Understand that their behaviors are always their communication. And it's not your job as a rider or handler to decide whether that behavior was an appropriate form of communication or not. I can tell you with animals, they start with a whisper, and when their whispers aren't heard, that's when it escalates to the level of communication that humans like to label as inappropriate.
Hmm.
If your horse got to that point, that means you missed all of the whispers that the horse gave you before. And the last point, which again, anybody can add to their life, whether it's a dog, a horse, a cat, communicating with animals is more listening than asking. And by asking, I mean talking or requesting. It's more listening than your verbal communication. And that's the piece that a lot of humans tend to overlook.
Yes, we like to hear ourselves talk more than we like to listen.
Yes, yes, exactly.
And so that brings me to a point that I often find difficult because I preach all of this to my people. You have to be able to listen. But then I find it hard to explain to them how to listen. Like if I have a really logical person and they're like, "What do you mean? How do I listen to my horse?" And for me, I don't know. I just get a feeling or I get a picture or something like that and I just trust it, right? I don't know. And sometimes they look at me like I'm crazy. So how do you start to tell people that they can listen? Like how do you start that conversation? What would you say to them?
The first thing I say to them is you have to make sure that you are fully present. If your
Mhm.
mind is full of your mortgage payment, something that happened at work, rushing to take care of the kids, the phone's ringing, your mind's on emails, you will not be able to hear the whispers that your animal is trying to communicate with you. So the first step is you just have to be present. You have to get to the barn, and maybe before you get out of your car, you just take a deep breath, set an intention to be present today, leave everything outside, walk into that barn fully present with your horse. Horses are some of the most intuitive animals on this planet. So much of communicating with them is energy. You don't have to have a special gift to feel their energy. If you can let everything else that fills our human minds go, you will, like you mentioned, feel. You'll get a feeling. You'll get a sense of something. And if you trust your intuition, that is the very best way to communicate with horses.
Awesome. And so how do they primarily communicate with each other? I know whispers, subtle body language, but I've heard that they also think in pictures. Is that real? Do they send you pictures? How do you feel about that? How do
I
you
agree
think
with
yeah.
I do agree with that. So all of the communication that horses have with each other is very telepathic. They will resort to behavior communication, like we talked about, ears pinned, kick, things like that. Even horse to horse, that comes after the telepathic communication has been ignored. Telepathic communication meaning, yes, they can send each other pictures, energy, feeling, messages, all telepathically. They're relationship animals. So everything with horses, because they're herd animals, is very much relationship driven. There's always communication going on. They're taking care of each other. The one that's in charge is making sure nobody steps out of line. There's constant communication going through their thoughts all the time. So that's how they try to communicate with us. Our job as humans is to learn their form of communication, not to expect them to learn ours. And so we do have to do the best we can to tap into energy, feeling their emotions,
Right.
feeling their thoughts or how they feel that day. And the great thing about horse people is a lot of people that are intuitive are drawn to horses. And I think it's because horses are so intuitive. So there are so many people out there that are more capable of hearing their horse's thoughts and emotions than they think they are.
Yes, I was thinking that. I was actually going to ask you if you think that is true because I
Yeah,
was thinking the same thing. I feel that with a lot of people. You have more ability than you think you do. You just need to quiet the rest of the crap down. What are some subtle signals horses use that humans tend to overlook or misinterpret?
great question. The most subtle signal that a horse will use is their eye. It's very hard when our brain is full of human responsibilities to notice the subtle changes in a horse's eye. Every horse person can tell when the white of the eye is showing and the horse is nervous and upset. I'm talking about 5 minutes before that. How did your horse's eye change? That is the most subtle form that most people overlook because we just quickly glance by our horse's head. The other, which has become an industry standard, is if I'm touching my horse or riding my horse and there's a twitch. A twitch in the skin anywhere is a form of communication from a horse. But as humans, we've just learned, oh, it's a ticklish spot, and
Mm,
sometimes it is, but most
right,
of the time it's communication. Tension. Same thing. My horse is feeling tense on the right rein. I'm just going to make him softer. Well, why? Yes, I understand you want to make him softer, but he's
right.
still communicating with you. The tension and the twitch are the two things in the industry that have become so common. People just think nothing of it and
Mm,
blow right by it.
yes. It's interesting that you say about the eyes because I am an eye watcher. It's interesting that you say that because I will often tell people that when they're riding and I'm teaching, I can see your horse's eye right now change. I teach it to people when they're working groundwork too. Watch your horse's face. Don't look what their neck's doing. I don't care. Look at their face. Look at their eyes, right? So
Exactly.
that's really interesting. So, in my understanding, horses are primarily interested in regulating their safety, having clarity, and then making connections in their communication. They're much less about sending messages, which I think humans are all about that. A lot of us see or are taught to see conversation from a horse as adversarial instead of just communication. So I see that becoming normal in human communication too. So, what would you say to people in the horse world to notice these behaviors or these communications from their horse as actual communication and not just an adversarial, let's fight it out, don't let them win the battle, that kind of mentality?
So, all beings, humans and animals, have boundaries in some way. I feel like the sport has come a long way, but it still has a long way to go. The horse's boundaries are not always taken into consideration. The rider may feel like the horse is ready for XYZ, but the horse is not. The horse has no choice but to communicate that to the rider in the only way they know how. They're not trying to start an argument, and they definitely don't want to fight. We know that horses are, if you go way back in time, fight or flight animals. They will always run before they have to fight. So, what I want riders to think about is if you get a behavior from your horse that you perceive as the horse wanting to start an argument, you have to understand that horse didn't feel like he had a way to get out of that situation. The horse would rather avoid the situation before he wants to fight. And even when he gives you that behavior, he doesn't want to fight. That is truly a cry for help from the horse. Please stop. It's
Right.
the horse asking for help and understanding, not fighting. Fighting is the very, very last thing any horse, any animal for that matter, wants to do. And if more humans could understand that, I think it would change the relationships between humans and animals considerably.
I agree. And I wonder where that came from, that thinking, that logic. Just where did that come from? I mean, who knows? But it's one of those like rabbit holes that I've gone down before. When
Yeah,
when did we start thinking that they always wanted to fight? I don't think that they do. Maybe it's just the size difference. Although people have the same feeling about little birds, they just want to
they do.
fight. So I guess it's not a size thing.
They
Interesting.
do.
Yeah.
And one thing I would like to add is when they tell me how long they have tried to get a message across as far as needing a little more space, needing a little more time, needing more patience, and it just hasn't been heard, I am blown away every single time at how incredibly patient they are and
Mm,
how much they can overlook and how much they put their own needs, their own fears, everything aside to try and please us. So by the time it gets to the point where you get these behaviors, which humans label as a problem or dangerous or an argument, the animal has given you so much, you have no idea. The one message I want to get across to everybody is it's not at all a fight. They will do everything in their power to avoid upsetting you in any way possible.
I agree. Yeah. So what do horses need from humans to feel safe enough to communicate honestly with us and not just someone like you?
They need to feel like their communication is not shut down or ignored. The most simple thing you can do is even set an intention. Our animals understand our words because we have to remember that they are a spiritual being. If you, and words carry energy, if you even walk up to your horse and tell them, I want you to communicate, I'm open to receiving what you want to tell me, those words carry energy. Whether you think your horse can hear them, understand them, that's completely irrelevant. The words carry energy, and putting that energy into your horse, who is truly an intuitive, energetic being, is the first step in giving the horse what he needs to feel like he can communicate with you. And then when you get the communication, whether you like what the horse had to say or not, you have to accept it. You
Right.
can't shut it down and you can't say, I'm sorry, I don't agree. Your
Right. Right.
horse will have his own feelings, his own emotions, his own likes, his own dislikes, just like your neighbor, your daughter, your husband. And you're not in a position to decide what that horse wants to say.
Right. So where do you see riders generally unintentionally shutting their horses down in that communication?
So, unintentionally, it's the behavior piece that we talked about. People see those behaviors as dangerous disobediences and they shut that down immediately, probably a little bit out of fear, a lot because the
Right.
industry has told us that is not acceptable. Your
Right.
horse can't do that. That's the most unintentional way they shut it down. Those behaviors are not seen as communication. They're seen as what you said, arguments or, disobediences. I'm
Right.
not saying that we can allow our horses to behave dangerously because they are so much bigger than us, but allowing the communication means stepping back and saying, okay, let me slow things down here. I'm not going to discipline the horse. I'm not going to fight with the horse. I'm going to take a moment, slow things down, and make sure my horse is comfortable.
You're allowed to have boundaries, and your horse is allowed to have boundaries too. Um, I hear a lot of people, well, my horse doesn't like it when I brush them, or they don't like it when I touch them here. Okay, well, then why are you doing that?
Right.
You know, like,
Exactly.
and sometimes we have to do things for their care that are unpleasant or they don't like, and you can acknowledge that and say, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to do this. But on a daily basis, if your horse doesn't like to have his ears rubbed, why are you doing it?
Right.
I don't know, but I think it's again an industry thing. We're told they can't tell us no.
Yes, that's exactly it. We're told they
Yeah.
can't tell us no. And that I think is where I'm starting to see change in the world,
Hmm.
but we still have a long way to go.
Yeah. So, what human habits, especially in riding and handling, create confusion or tension instead of clarity for our horses?
The first is distraction and multitasking. We live in a world where we are on all the time. The email's on our phone, the text is on our phone, and like I talked about earlier, we're thinking about what we have to do 3 hours after we leave the barn. That is so confusing to horses because they are energetic beings and most of their communication comes from energy. And so they can feel all of that, what to them feels like chaos and stress in our bodies, in our minds, in our thoughts. And that confuses them. Because even though we're trying to say something very specific, they're hearing everything else that's going through our head or not able to communicate back with us because we're just not paying attention.
Right. Yes. And that leads me into my next question, which was how does that urgency, fear, and frustration change what they hear from us, even if we think we're giving the same aid? But like that fear around cantering. And if people have had a bad experience in the canter and then they think that they're giving the aids to canter, but the horse isn't doing it, then we assume or we make the judgment that the horses are misbehaving again. Like they're not doing what I want them to do. When in reality, your brain is not matching what your body is saying.
Correct.
I guess my question there is, what do you think is a way that people can get their energy and their body to match?
It's one of the hardest parts of working with horses or any animal, being present, but people have to work on being present. So that's not available to everybody all of the time.
Right.
It's the energy that is strongest. So if you're feeling fear, that probably will hold a louder energy than your aids of saying, please canter. So for people that are dealing with that, take a moment and acknowledge it. Mentally strengthening your thoughts is the best way to get over that, but that's not going to happen in the moment that you're in that situation.
Right.
You have to do that work outside of the barn, and then you have to bring it into the barn. So, in that moment when you're dealing with it, what you can do is stop for a moment, set an intention to release that. I understand that I'm scared that I'm going to fall off again if the horse canters. I'm going to release that, take a deep breath, and as you breathe out, imagine that thought just leaving your brain. Is it going to work? It might not, but the more you practice it, it will start working. That's the
Right.
key. You have to practice it. And the horse is picking up on the emotion of being scared. So the horse is hesitant. I tell people all the time, use your words. Words carry energy. Practice mindfulness outside of the barn. But in that exact moment, when you haven't yet developed the skill of being mindful, talk to the horse. I'm afraid right now. I'm really sorry I'm giving you a mixed message. I'd like it if you could canter. Horses do understand us. And again, words carry energy. So just keep talking the whole time. Say what you want to happen. It'll manifest eventually, but they get there and they freeze because they're
Yeah.
scared. Get them to talk. Tell the horse what you want it to do. Use those
Yeah.
words. Create that energy.
And we've been told that they can smell fear and it if and not just that they can smell fear, but that they'll take advantage of us if we are afraid, which I think is the biggest bunch of crap.
Yes.
I think they are more likely to take care of you if you're afraid and you're honest about it.
Yes.
It's when you're sending that mixed signal that you get behaviors that you don't want or behaviors that might be scary. I guess. I just wonder where did all these weird things that people came up with? Like, when did we start telling people this and why?
Right.
And then why do you think so many riders try to discipline a behavior before they understand it?
I think they've been taught that.
Yeah,
And I
me too.
think
Yeah,
to change that, we just need more trainers that are teaching riders to understand it before you discipline it.
yeah.
And even if they know, if they are very fearful, that kicks in first. But the first step is having trainers and instructors that teach them.
I've talked on the podcast before. One of the things that I noticed about myself years ago that when I would be riding horses and they would spook, I would be really reactive to that. And it made me mad. I realized it's making you mad. But why is it making you mad? It's making you mad because it's scaring you that something else is going to happen, right?
Yeah.
And once I was able to realize that and acknowledge it, and then I could start to change the behavior around it. And now people often laugh at me because if a horse spooks when I'm riding, I'm usually laughing. Because why are you getting mad? It's not doing anything
Right.
except making it worse. If we can just release that feeling, like you said, just let it go.
Yeah.
It's not that important at the end of the day. And what's the difference between correcting a horse and communicating with a horse?
So to me, correction does not involve communication. Instead, when we communicate, we teach them. So if a horse makes a mistake, instead of thinking about correcting them, which does not take their opinion or emotion into consideration, if we think about communicating with them, that means we're going to teach them. Does that make sense? So a
Absolutely.
correction is
Yeah.
emotion driven, and communication is empathy, kindness, patience, and a desire to educate your horse further. If we correct them with our emotion, we shut them down. They shut down their emotion, they shut down their communication. If they're shut down, they're not a sponge that's open to learning more. If we communicate with them, we can teach them something and they want to learn. Why do they want to learn? Because they want us to be happy.
Right. And we have put them in this position. We've domesticated them. Why do we not feel the responsibility to educate
Right,
them?
right,
I realize that not every human is the same, but for the most part, when you have children, you don't just expect them to know everything, right? You feel like you have a responsibility to educate them about the world.
right.
Why do we not feel the same way about our horses?
All animals. It
All
amazes.
animals, exactly. Especially any animal that you want to, keep domestically. I feel like I want to educate the deer about running across the road, or the squirrels. I'm like, please
Yes.
don't do that. It's such a sense of like human entitlement. You should know what I want just because most humans don't even know what they really want. So how do you expect your horse to know? That'd probably be a whole nother episode though.
Right.
What's the balance between trusting your intuition and staying grounded in what the horse is physically showing you?
So it is hard for people to stay in balance with both of those if they don't trust their intuition outside of the barn. But again, if you try as much as possible to be present in the barn, I always tell people, whether it's your horse, your dog, your cat, just be silent, take a deep breath, go with your intuition first, and then see what the horse is reflecting physically, behaviorally, because when animals feel that you are open to receiving their communication and their emotion, they will show us some behavioral or physical match to that. Because the really cool thing about animals is they understand that we aren't as good telepathically as they are. So they know that they have to give us some sort of visual so that we trust our intuition.
Hmm. That that's awesome.
It could be
That's
very subtle, but they
yeah,
will they will give us something.
yeah. And it's so funny because I had such a hard time naming this module or what I call the seeds of partnership because I didn't know what to call it so people would understand it. We need to know as humans that we can have communication with our horses in a way that still allows for structures and boundaries. What do you think is the easiest way to explain that so that people can understand it and not think about it in this mystical, magical sense, but in a more practical sense?
So, my thought is empathetic communication is considering the other being's emotions, feelings, and peacefulness. We don't want anybody to be stressed.
Right.
Doing that is nothing, there's nothing woo woo about that. That's having a caring heart. Saying whoever I'm communicating with, whether it's horse, human, dog, cat, I have a right to say what I want to say, but they have a right to say what they want to say. So to me, empathetic communication is just listening and allowing the emotions and the thoughts of the other being to be received by you. And to me, it can be that simple. And
Yeah.
then you can go further and say, okay, I feel like we have a duty to take care of animals as humans. So when that horse, if he feels stressed or upset or frustrated, just like a parent to a child, it's my duty to help you work through that in a positive way while still understanding that there are boundaries for your safety, for your health, for my safety. And doing that doesn't mean that we're shutting them down. We're
Right.
just trying to teach them these things while taking their emotions and feelings and thoughts into consideration so they feel safe too. It's not just about me feeling safe or being safe, it's about their safety too, mentally and physically.
Yeah. And it's something that we do with our children. We
Right.
set boundaries with them so that they feel safe. It's really something that we do normally with people. I don't understand why we make it so difficult with the horses.
We do. It's crazy. I tell people all the time your animal, your horse, your dog, your cat, that's like your toddler child. You know,
Right.
you
Right.
have to, they don't know anything. You have to teach them. You have to keep them safe, but you can't scare them to keep them safe because that's not going to work. So when you want to set that boundary, you do have to make sure that you're listening to them and helping them understand. It's not a
Right.
dictatorship. This is why I hope you feel safe. I'm going to help you feel safe, and then you move on.
Right. We have this stigma, though, too, I think, in the world about calling pets children,
Yes.
which I don't know that we have really have a good word to describe our relationship with horses and dogs and all of that. But we make fun of the people who are the dog mommies who carry them in backpacks and dress them up. We have this whole stigma about that. And a lot of times as horse people, we don't want to be that. It's a horse. Oh, well, you're too nice to your horse or you baby the horse. To me, it's knowing the mental capacity, right? They think a lot like a toddler child.
Yes.
We're not babying them. It's just being human, being in the animal kingdom, really.
Yes.
Yeah. And this is a funny question because I was talking to a friend of mine earlier today who hasn't ridden in a little bit. She's been on her own journey of body work with horses. She was saying that she's really starting to get this feeling about riding again. She's been going through my online course and she said, I realized that I could be doing those things in the barn while I'm doing chores. And I hadn't thought about that before. So, what does that look like to you? Because I think that's hugely important, and that's a big piece that we often miss, whether your horses live at home with you or you keep them in a boarding barn. You still have an opportunity to communicate with them every second and not just when you're riding or lunging or doing whatever that you think is the work, right? There's so many more opportunities that we can communicate with our horses and make them feel seen and heard and safe.
Yes, definitely. So from the moment you get to the barn with your horse, you are, as you said, communicating with them. So in everyday life, you're bringing your horse in from the paddock. If you see he wants to stop and look at something, let him stop and look at something. That is a simple form of communication where the horse may just kind of perk over, pick up his ears, and he's saying, hey, I'm interested in that for a second. But how many people just say, nope, we're going to the barn. I've only got an hour to ride. Let's go. And they go right in.
Right.
But you missed that opportunity. You missed that opportunity where the horse tried to tell you that he wanted to see something. And what if you stand there and look at it with him? People don't give their horses enough credit, or any animal, for how much it means to them when you do something with them. I hear it all the time in readings. The horse is coming into the barn and he wants to smell something on the ground. Nope, they get their head picked up and they go right in. He was curious about that. Give him 30 seconds. Give him 10 seconds. Just acknowledge, hey, you want to smell that? Great. And then just sit there with him, stand there with him, give him a pat on the neck so it looks like you're interested in it too. There's a lot with animals that we overlook. When we do something with them, it means so much to them. And horses get the short stick all the time. The internet is buzzing with enrichment. Here's a game for your cat when you're gone. Bring your dog for a walk so he can sniff. What about horses? They want to sniff. They want to look at something. And when I talk to these animals and their owner, I like to call it the guardian, but their guardian stops and does something with them, their heart fills right up with love and joy. Something as simple as just walking down that aisle and your horse puts his head down because maybe there's a little piece of grain on the ground. Don't pull his head away. Let him grab the grain. When you're doing your ride and you want to go out and jump and the horse takes the jump and he's just kind of ho-hum about it, do something else. Give him a choice now and then to do something else. And those are the everyday ways that you can tell your horse you're listening to their communication. If you're in the barn aisle and you're brushing your horse, and we've all done this one, you're at the withers and the horse is like sticking his nose out and he's so happy. We think that's great and we keep scratching because we can tell they like it. It's not just the grooming, it's the sniffing, it's the enrichment, it's taking your horse just on a walk, maybe down the driveway of the barn. Do something different. Give him something else to look at. Give your horse enrichment and he will start showing you how much it means to him and showing you what he wants to do.
Yeah. We are taught too that horses need consistency.
Yeah.
Right? They need things to be a certain way every day. And I think that is such a bunch of crap. Now, I think horses are also like humans in that they have different personalities, and some of them feel much safer and much better when things are very, very predictable. But there are also horses that really just like enrichment. They like different. One of the favorite exercises that I like to just tell people on the ground is just let your horse take you on a walk.
Yes.
Go
Yes.
somewhere. And when I was showing my horse, who's 30 now, I did that. We would go to horse shows and I would let him lead. Obviously, you keep them out of the other people's boundaries, right? But otherwise, you go check it out, see what you need. And I remember specifically at the Virginia Horse Center, back where the RVs park, there is this weed that grows in the gravel that this horse absolutely loves to eat. And one time, my dad came with me and I was like, all right, we have this thing. I get everything set up in the stall and then we go on a walk and I let him lead. And my dad is like, all right, well, I'll take him on the walk and you do the stall thing. I didn't say anything to him about this section of the showgrounds, or I didn't say a word. He was like, he took me right there. It was a beeline. And it seems like such a weird thing, but I would always get people at horse shows asking me, how do you come to the horse show by yourself? Your horse is calm. Is this some kind of unicorn that you have? Well, yes, but also he's an active participant in what is happening. Like, he's happy to get on the trailer. He loves to be a ham at horse shows. He has choices. I'm not just saying you must do this, that, and the other thing. It's so hard for people to let go, though. Let go of that need to control.
Yes, for sure.
So, how do we start listening without projecting our own emotions or stories?
So humans love to label. They'll
Mm-hmm.
say, "Oh, my horse is spooky. I can't do that." And your horse is going to be spooky if you keep saying he is, because words carry energy.
Right.
But for us to listen to our horses without projecting our own emotions and thoughts, we have to stop labeling. You cannot label your horse as a spooky horse or an athletic horse or a curious horse. Your horse is just your horse. And if you want to listen to what your horse has to say, you have to let go of all those opinions that you have, those labels. Start fresh. And that's really the only way that you can truly listen to who your horse is. Every time we have an opinion or a label on what we think our horse is or what we want our horse to be, our human brain only hears that stuff. We don't hear everything else that the horse is trying to say.
So if a rider wanted to improve their communication starting today, what's the first thing or one thing they could change
The
right
one
away?
thing they could change right away is to walk into that barn and say, from this moment forward, I see everything through my horse's point of view, not mine. And that's all they need to change. So when the horse spooks, instead of the fear, he might step on my foot, I might fall off, you say, that horse was afraid. You don't get to choose what your horse is afraid of or not. There are plenty of animals, kids, humans that have illogical fears and some that have logical fears. And that's why I say you have to see everything from your horse's point of view. If you change that, your entire relationship and all of the communication with your horse will change because you will be coming at it from a completely different perspective.
Yes, I agree. I like that. What do horses teach us about communication that applies to our relationship with other humans?
We get the furthest with kindness, patience, and listening. And I think that applies to every living being on this planet.
I agree. Indeed. All right. So we talked about one thing riders could change, but if you could think about one thing that horses could say to riders, what do you think it would be?
So
And
I
what do
had a
you
hard
know
time.
it would be?
I had a hard time because there's a lot of things horses want to say.
What do you think is the main thing that horses want to say that we are not hearing?
The main thing they want to say is softer and slower, please. Everything. Everything. And I believe that comes from just us being, on the go the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And they're big, so we think they need everything strong. But the
Mm-hmm.
majority of horses that I talk to, softer and slower. So everything you do is softer. The training goes slower. Expect them to move slower. They're not like this. Look at them in the field. They're laid
Right.
back animals. It doesn't mean they can't be forward when we ride them because we have an athlete
Mm-hmm.
or a competition horse. Just in general, processes being
Yes.
slower is what it boils down to. And the
Yes.
other thing, which I know you asked for one, but it's very important, I feel, for the animals to, hopefully at least get a few people that start to think this way is last week I was in a session with a dog, but this applies to every single animal. And a lot of animals that have what we call a behavioral issue or a nuisance behavior, or the behaviors we label as dangerous. The dog said that it wanted its guardian to know, I can get better, but I will never be perfect, just like humans aren't perfect. And I do feel like we as humans expect our animals to be perfect, and they aren't, and they can't be. It's
Mm-hmm.
not training, it's not anything. They just aren't perfect, and they never will be. And I feel like a lot of the miscommunication between humans and animals comes from expecting perfection from beings that are not perfect. And we aren't either. They forgive our
No.
mistakes, we must forgive their mistakes.
Yes. Agreed. That's actually funny because that is my other thing that I love to teach people about is letting go of their own perfectionism. And a lot of the people in the horse industry are crazy perfectionist control freaks. And I'm not saying that negative. They're competitive people. Especially if you're talking about the competitive side of it, right? They're competitors, they're type A personalities, they're go-getters, but in the sense of the horses, whoa, that's a little much, right? You said at the beginning that they're incredibly patient, and my horse, who I talked about, who's 30 now, he I think was the one that really showed me how patient they were and just the wisdom that they're always trying to impart on us and we're often missing. So, um, this is very interesting. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, I loved it. All right, horse fiends, thanks for hanging out with us today. If this episode got your gears turning, don't forget to check out Reconnect, Rebuild, and Ride with Heart. The links are in the show notes. It's the program that'll take everything we talked about here and actually help you apply it in real life with your horse. And hey, before you ride off, make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a quick rating or review of the show. It helps more riders like you find us and keep these conversations going. All the links you need are waiting in the show notes. Happy riding!